The rise of the internet has brought about many positive changes to our lives, from instant communication to global access to information. However, with every technological advancement comes a new set of challenges. One of the biggest challenges faced in the digital age is the prevalence of online scams and fraud. The timeline of online fraud is long and complicated, but there are a few key milestones that are worth mentioning. The early 2000s, phishing scams began to emerge as a popular way for scammers to steal personal information. These scams involved sending emails that appear to be from legitimate businesses, asking the recipient to click on a link and provide their personal information. Today, phishing scams remain a common way for scammers to steal personal information. For this conversation, we're now being joined by tech expert Ogochukwu Onwuzurike. She is the country manager Nigeria at Truecaller. Good to have you on Newsday.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
So let's talk about tech scam epidemic or thereabout, protecting against online fraud. Are we doing enough in Nigeria, and how efficient is current tech to checkmate online fraud? We always talk about phishing and all that stuff. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's a critical discussion to have at this point in time. There's growth and a rise in scam and online fraud and all of that. But let me share a few statistics that, Kaspersky, which is the antivirus giant, shared a few years ago. You have 7% of internet users prone to some sort of phishing scams. You have 31.1%, exposed to it. This is just Nigeria, by the way. And these guys are exposed to all sorts of financial crimes and phishing attempts, And you have an overwhelming 51.2% of scams being, prevalent online via different social media platforms, people who pose as online sellers, businesses that pay online. So it's not unusual that there's so much hue and cry on social media. Are we doing enough? I do not think so. There is so much awareness that could better inform people, educate people, let people be more aware of the different kind of scams, how you're able to spot them, how, some kind of prevention tips and all of that. So we're at a very critical moment in the country when it comes to scams, but a lot more could be done. Yeah.
In your opinion, what can government agencies, industry leaders, organizations do to enhance that cybersecurity readiness and resilience in Nigeria? I mean, just a couple of days ago, we were hearing the President's Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, saying that, social media is a menace within itself, and there's a possibility where they might just scrap it altogether. There's been a pushback, obviously, but maybe we should be having a different conversation. What would you say to the Nigerian government in terms of, assessing our current cybersecurity landscape?
Absolutely, and it's strange because we actually have very good institutions, and of course we have the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. I think we should talk about how do we strengthen these institutions, how do we strengthen the legal framework, how do we, create more awareness, some kind of national orientation for people to understand this type of scams and all of that. Let's take the National Information Technology Development Agency, which is NIDA, which is a very, very strong agency. I've had, of course, in my career to interact with them. They're very forward-thinking. They're very, big on public-private partnership. So I think it's more around strengthening the institutions, strengthening the legal framework. How do we, of course, like laws in this country, the problem is always a problem of enforcement. But we have those laws, the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. How do we drive and make sure that people that are guilty of these crimes actually pay for it? So I think that's the focus, and we have to strengthen the institutions that the government has already put in place, other than scrapping, social media. That doesn't.
Okay, very good. If we might reflect on balancing innovation and cybersecurity here, how would you link that to financial fraud and hacking prospects in the banking sector, and how can businesses protect, themselves when it comes to financial fraud using tech?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think innovation and security can coexist. In fact, innovation and security should coexist. You can drive innovation while making sure that all security system, even at the point of services and all of that, is well enhanced. In terms of financial institutions and financial fraud, the problem that we see is that, a lot of information around criminal activities in the financial institution sits in silos. So banks have, and financial institutions have people that have perpetrated some sort of fraud within their ecosystem, but the other bank does not have visibility to it.
All right, if I may come in, is this specific innovation for specific crimes here?
Yeah.
So can you reflect more on that?
So my point is, I mean, if you have people if you have information sitting in silos, you have to be able to share that information and have some kind of open intelligence and open source where these scammers cannot continue to perpetrate their acts, because what happens is that they move from one place to the other. But if there's some kind of shared information and all of that, people are able to recognize them. You're not able to perpetrate those scams from one place to another. The second thing is, how do we, continue to educate the users, continue to educate the consumers on how to be able to spot those scams? How do you identify your corporate tools and make sure that they are protective of the consumers and they're taking care, they're following all the regulatory rules in terms of onboarding, digital KYC, and make sure that all that is well taken care of. There's also the problem of the integrity of our databases, for which these financial accounts or whatever are being opened. We know that we've heard reports of unconfirmed breaches of national database, and people are able to onboard and open accounts and scam people of that. How did they open this account?
And not only in the financial sector, but even when it comes to electoral malpractice, online frauds as well. So it's a wide gambit of scams, what have you.
Exactly. So our institutions, our national databases, we need to take a second look at those national databases. We're talking of the likes of NIN, BVN. What is the integrity of these databases? Because banks and financial institutions rely on those databases to be able to onboard people that are legitimate people or illegitimate people into the ecosystem who now go out to defraud other people and unsuspecting individuals.
I mean, we've spoken rather about how wide, how this cuts across different sectors. And as a leader in the tech industry yourself, I wonder what role you believe technology companies like Truecaller can play in empowering users with the tools and the resources that they need to identify and prevent this potential scams and fraudulent activities outside of what we do know, Truecaller for. Are there any other, any other innovations that Truecaller is trying to come up with to help mitigate these potential scams? So,
I mean, one of the beautiful things about, Truecaller, the first thing is, there's that user-generated content, which allows that when we see certain threshold of scams and all of that on a particular number or whatever, we already flag that number as scam. And what that does is, you cannot scam a lot of people and get away with it if you're on the Truecaller network, because we already flag that and let people know that. So once you see that call coming in, you're able to... Yeah, that happened to me a number of times. The call comes in, I just see scam. I'm like, no, definitely not picking that call. Definitely not taking the call. Or, even if you decide to take the call, you are more alert, you are more aware. So that's even on the basic level. But we're also empowering people. We're also driving that awareness, because there are lots of millions of people that are offline. And these are people that are prone and vulnerable to all of this. We're also putting in a lot of course, machine learning, artificial intelligence, to help us, track. This is just in the telephone ecosystem to see, numbers that have certain patterns and certain behaviors. It will strike you to know that a legitimate number behaves differently than a number that is used to perpetrate scams. The patterns that we see from the back end are different. So how do we continue to empower users and try to let them know that you need to be careful and give them information as a first-line mousetrap, to sort of protect themselves from this sort of fraud. But yeah.
We've been talking about scams and fraud, as it were. But let's talk about the prospect for tech revolution in Africa, as it were. So, as an opportunity for growth, which countries do you think in Africa have embraced and are reaping the benefits of tech space, and how has it contributed to their economies and, of course, GDP? We could start with Nigeria as well. Are we doing enough in that regard, you think?
I mean, we are doing a lot. We have quite a number of, if you look at the number of unicorns that have come out of Africa, Nigeria stands really strong. In terms of financial services, in terms of the financial industry, Nigeria is really standing really strong. And there's so much development, economic development, digital transformation that has happened in that sector, and a wealth of job creation that has happened in that segment. You also look at South Africa; they've also done very well. What they have done is, their contribution in tech is sort of balanced, which is where Nigeria is a bit lacking. We seem to be very focused on the financial services and all of that. But South Africa has well balanced across, industries, transportation, aerospace dynamics and all of that. So you see that sort of balance in their economy. Kenya is not doing badly as well when it comes to the tech ecosystem. In terms of funding that has gone into Africa from VCs into tech spaces, Kenya is also ranking really strong. We see a lot of countries from the East Africa region also doing well, but Nigeria is not doing badly. We actually stand very high on that list. The question is, what is the impact of that? Because you continue to measure the impact of technology across 4 levels. How does it translate to governance? How does it translate to technology? How does it translate to people? And what is the social impact? But in terms of, are we there? We're there. But the question is, across those 4 pillars, how does it really translate? But that's another conversation.
All right, then I think that's a good place to end this conversation. We appreciate your time.
Thank
Country
you so much.
Manager here in Nigeria of Truecaller, Ogochukwu Onwuzurike. Thank you so much for being on Newsday.